Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sondheim Artscape Prize Finalist Artist Talk Series. My name is Dany Chan. I am the co-curator of the Sondheim Artscape Prize exhibition and assistant curator of Asian art at the Walters Art Museum. The 2021 Janet and Walter Sondheim Artscape Prize is presented by the Walters Art Museum and the Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts. It is made possible through the generous support of M&T Bank, along with those supporting the Sondheim Endowment. The exhibition at the Walters Art Museum is made possible through the combined generosity of individual donors, foundations, corporations, and grants from the City of Baltimore, Maryland State Arts Council, citizens of Baltimore County, and Howard County Government and Howard County Arts Council. The finalists are currently on view in the exhibition at the Walters Art Museum, which reopens to the public on Wednesday, June 23rd. However, today I have the pleasure of interviewing Hoesy Corona. Hoesy Corona is an emerging and uncategorized queer Mexican artist living and working in the United States. He makes work across a variety of media, spanning installation, performance, and video. He creates otherworldly narratives centering marginalized individuals in society by exploring a process-based practice that investigates what it means to be a queer Latinx immigrant in a place where there are few. Hoesy has exhibited widely in galleries, museums, and public spaces in the United States and abroad. His colorful sculptural works fitted to the human body have been presented at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, the Baltimore Museum of Art, Transformer DC, the Walters Art Museum, and the Reach at the Kennedy Center. His research has been supported by various regional and national grants, including the Maryland State Arts Council Individual Artist Award, the Ruby's Artist Grant, Baker Artist Award, the MAP Fund Grant, and the Andy Warhol Foundation Grit Fund Grant, among others. Hoesy is a recent Halcyon Arts Lab Fellow from 2017 to 2018 in Washington, D.C., and a Tulsa Artist Fellow in 2019 and 2020 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In recent years, he has been in residence at Oxbox School of Art, Washington College Cole Gallery Residency, and the Meriwether District Artist in Residence. In 2020, last year, he was the recipient of the Municipal Art Society of Baltimore Artists Travel Prize. Welcome, Hoesy, and congratulations on being selected a finalist.
Hi, Dany. So good to be here.
And so, for the past couple of slides, our audience has been viewing installation shots of your exhibition at the Sondheim show. And so you've conceptualized it as Sunset Moonlight, the title. Can you tell us a little bit about the concept behind this exhibition?
Certainly. And first of all, thank you, to everybody that's watching now or will be watching in the future. I am just delighted to share Sunset Moonlight with all of you. Sunset Moonlight is a survey exhibition spanning 10 years of artistic production from my studio. And this exhibition really brings together 5 distinct bodies of work created between 2010 and 2021 and includes installation, performance, sculpture, video, 2D, and ceramics work. And through an exploration and examination of societal othering, scapegoating, fear of death, white supremacy, xenophobia, and the climate crisis, I poetically consider what it means to be a queer Latinx immigrant living in the United States. And in the process, I uncover the physical and psychological ramifications of really just never seeing yourself reflected anywhere. And the title, Sunset Moonlight, really stems from a feeling that I get from time to time when I think about just the immense beauty of this thing called life and realize that we live in a place where a glowing orb of fire rises in the morning and sets in the evening, welcoming a second glowing orb that reflects the first one's light throughout the night. And of course, when I was making the selections for this exhibition, I also noticed that the color palette, as well as various works from different time frames, included the moon or the sun, oftentimes at sunset. And once the title was selected, I really enjoyed that Sunset Moonlight alludes to an in between space, a moment of transition, both a rise and a fall, a moment of magic, really.
Yes, and definitely that title and what you've just described really speaks to a very distinctive personal creative vocabulary that you've honed throughout the years. And it's definitely on display in this exhibition. Can you describe a little bit more in detail about this vocabulary?
Yeah, so my personal creative vocabulary is really about making sense of my diverse interests, and it's rooted in really listening and paying attention to my intuition, and is an accumulative process of knowledge building, where everything that I'm interested in and everything that I've explored successfully in the studio gets thrown and added in there to this collection. The creative vocabulary is also concerned with the materiality of the work, the manipulation of materials, and the transformation of materials. The overall aesthetic of my work is something that is very important to me, and I feel like it's important because at a certain point, I was actually making art from literal garbage. So I really had to elevate this work and create a certain level of sophistication in the work so that in the future, this work could, coexist in harmony with new work. And for me, my creative vocabulary is really one that is just very expansive. It's always becoming enhanced, and it's very much aware of an interdisciplinary approach to making. So in this way, I'm able to switch, quickly between media, but also think about maybe aspects that we don't think about often. For instance, wall labels. Wall labels for me are very important because these are kind of like the handrails that the artist gives viewers and experts alike into the work. So again, this process is just a way that I make sense of the work. And then because if I didn't have this set up, it might feel a little wild. You might be like, oh my God, they're making all kinds of things. What's going on here? So it's my job to really kind of make sense a little bit and then present it to the public.
Fantastic. And so, since we have you here in our program, I would love it if you can take our audience on a journey through the exhibition space and what they will encounter, as well as speaking to the evolution of your voice through this past decade.
So I think it's important for audience members to know that my work is really best understood against the backdrop of settler colonialism, U.S. imperialism, the politics of power, the politics of place, and also the process of forced racialization in the United States. Now, all of this filtered through a queer immigrant lens where I am able to contribute my personal experiences as well as my observations in the work. And as a young teen artist, I didn't have the language then to kind of like, articulate what it was that I was noticing. But I remember early on realizing that my white peers were more aligned with success than I was. So again, I wasn't sure I didn't have a language to explain what I was noticing, but I knew that it was in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, I decided that I had to align myself with these folks in order to try to find success in the world of art. And this carried on through early art school until a certain point when I firmly rejected these ideas about making art for a white audience. So, really kind of like being careful and thinking about that as at the forefront. So by rejecting this, I feel like it really allowed me to switch to a more daring, a more specific, more direct and exploratory way of producing work. And around this time, I feel like that's when I also just rejected and looked away from finding inspiration solely in a whitewashed retelling of our history. So, all of these things happening at once, but I was then able to align the work with myself and really forge paths ahead that are unique to me, but also maybe are underexplored, but nonetheless important to bring to light to better understand who we are,
Mhm.
to look back and see who we've been, who we are currently, and who we hope to become. So, for instance, in the first body of work that greets viewers as they enter the museum gallery is my Scapegoat series, which is really concerned with notions around blame and shame, and kind of like thinking about these groups of people in really any community that are expelled or sacrificed for oftentimes for their queer sensibilities. And so in this work, I'm not necessarily interested in retelling trauma. I'm not interested in trauma porn. What I'm interested in is in a retelling, a rethinking, a re-envisioning of sorts. So in this series, you are presented with the scapegoat deity. And the deities are present in a relaxed fashion, in a safe environment that really re-envisions a triumphant ending for these social castaways.
Right. And so then moving through the exhibition, the next series that we encounter are the Climate Immigrants series, along with your fantastically colorful and dynamic climate ponchos. I think these are definitely my favorite in the entire exhibition.
I think they're my favorite too. So we have that in common. Yeah. So with Climate Immigrants, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. So Climate Immigrants is the performance series, and Climate Ponchos, the central image in this slide, is what the performers wear in Climate Immigrants. And so in this series, I was really interested in problematizing notions around what an immigrant is and our relationship to nature. So really thinking about the climate crisis, and in this way, I'm combining them. So I didn't want to polarize any particular viewer that may encounter this work. I wanted everybody to feel that they were implicated in this narrative. So instead of being like, immigrants, who are those people? I don't care. Suddenly, it's a climate immigrant. It's not immigrants. Like, are you a climate immigrant? How are we relating to this, new language and understanding of our world? So yeah, in these performances, performers wear these climate ponchos which depict the archetypes of the traveler, and oftentimes the faces of the performers are obfuscated, and it's really just about traversing space. It's about going from point A to point B, and really just thinking about bodies in movement, and how we relate to them, how we our understanding of immigrants and bodies in movement that way, and how we, I feel like these definitions are shifting before us. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And I feel like as time progresses, you're able to look back and understand maybe what happened, or you're able to articulate it. Here, I feel like I'm in the middle of it, and I'm like, hey, like let's pay attention. Actually, Terry Henderson wrote a beautiful article for Be More Art, and she described them as these are sirens warning the world. And I was like, I love that they are sirens.
Now, the Nobodies, I think are perhaps one of your oldest series spanning your career thus far.
It is actually. So this body of work is from 2010, but you know how art making happens. So it
Mhm.
really started a little bit earlier, but in 2010 it was when it debuted. And this series, I was really thinking about personhood, how personhood comes about. How do we construct our own personhood? How is personhood often constructed for us and projected on us? So, in this series, I'm really interested in both the simultaneous visibility and invisibility of the body. It really makes me think almost of the way some folks, in a very problematic way, consume culture, where we love the visuals, we love the food, we love all the elements, but maybe there's a certain type of negative feeling towards the people producing the culture, the people producing the food. So yeah, in this series, what we're looking at right now is a performance from 2011 on the wall, and I titled this "The Border Shaman." And it was a part of an immersive set of installations. We had about 20 artists participating, and this was the last room. And so I called it the border shaman because I was interested in kind of guiding the viewer now out of these magical spaces into the real world.
Mhm.
So in this image, I am juxtaposing the famous Rene Magritte's "This Is Not a Pipe" with William Naricio's image, where he took a picture of Speedy Gonzalez and juxtaposed the text "Not Mexican" over it. And so here, instead of thinking about, oh, it's not an object, it's a representation of an object, again, going back to personhood, I am warning the viewer that if they don't engage critically with the visual world will write them. So if you think about the creation of the Mexican in popular culture, this really goes hand in hand with, say, like movies, like where people were going. Movies are interesting because you go into a dark place. The untold policy is that you sit down and shut the f up and let the visuals write you. So in this way, the imagination started creating this idea of what a Mexican is. And if you don't engage critically with those visuals, you accept them. So yeah, I feel like this is actually I'm glad that in the selection process, this is the one that I went with, because it's such a good representation of this body of work.
Fantastic. Now, almost all of your work it melds not only the physical object that you're making, the costumes, the sculptures, but that there's always seems to be the embodiment performative element to it. And we have, Mother, Death, Life, Mama here as the next series in the exhibition. And you've greatly included 2 videos as well.
Yeah, and you know what? So it was such an exciting moment for me to really, and it was a challenge as well, to think about this entire exhibition, because again, it's bringing these separate bodies of work together. And so I was really thinking about creating a harmonious space that I didn't want any one particular body of work to kind of like fight another one, So, but when I was making these selections and thinking about the liveliness of a lot of the work, I decided to include not just the ephemera from the actual performances, but also stills from the performances, or in this case, videos from performances. And yeah, in Mother, Death, Life, Mama, I'm really concerned and thinking about, our relationship to death. It's a constant. It's something that we're all going to experience, have experienced, will experience, and especially with this past year and a half that it's such, in the forefront of our mind, our thinking. And so I do this through kind of like the correlation of humans' relationship to nature, and actually this body of work, the Mother, Death, Life, Mama, is actually very dear to me because earlier in the year, I lost my father. And this was in a way, I feel like this body of work has been ongoing since 2012. But this loss really kind of like, I understood this body of work in a clearer way after that loss. So it holds a spot in my heart. But yeah, so I do this in this series, but I also do it with the climate immigrants, with the performance stills and the ponchos right next to it, so that if the viewer spends time in this installation, they will realize and notice that I've created little vignettes at every little kind of turn. And so, I've given you all the information you could ever need. I'm giving you the visuals. I'm giving you the textual information. Again, these live moments through video. And, if you sit there with it, it may take a second, but then you realize like, oh my God, these are not just sculptures. They're wearables. They're sculptures, wearable sculptures. But for me, I'm excited about that because I've never wanted my work to function as one or the other. I like the idea of the work being very expansive, that it can have multiple lives, and that you can encounter it as a sculpture. But again, with the juxtaposition of the video, you're like, they had lives that go beyond this museum.
Yeah. And I changed my mind. This is my favorite artwork in your
Oh,
exhibition.
very nice. Which
It
one?
is,
Which one?
yes, and it's so magnetic in person.
The white construction.
Yes, the white construction.
Yes, and you know what? That was also something that solidified the title for me when I
Mm,
started making sketches. I was like, ah, this vortex of sorts, this very like commanding presence, and then that's actually what turned me on to notice the moon and the sun and other works within the exhibition.
mhm,
But yeah, so this is a part of my series White Constructions, which started in 2015 and is ongoing. But I'm really thinking about the arbitrary construction of race in the United States that's just so prevalent, right, in our daily lives. And so I'm thinking about that, but I'm also kind of like making a connection to our relationship with language. And I think this stems from the fact that when I was considering the forced process of racialization that happens in the United States, where, you know, people don't necessarily identify as XYZ, but they are forced to identify as XYZ, you know? So when I was thinking about this, I realized that there was an element of invisibility, that the people being racialized were non white people. And so that was very specific, but whiteness and the white element remained invisible and out of view, even though it was the one controlling this forced process of racialization. So I think that's quite interesting to kind of like, again, think about an arbitrary construct that is imaginary, baseless, useless, worth nothing, and then thinking about our relationship to language. How do we create our world? You know, like language has the possibility to illuminate truth, but as we noticed a couple of years ago to the present, it also has the capacity to obfuscate, you know, ideas, people, our reality. And you know what? Because language is so, you know, it describes things and it's so present. I'm also kind of excited that I was able to bring in the poetic element of sorts in the titles
mhm.
of all of the works, but also the title of the exhibition.
Wonderful. And so Beth Horton on Facebook says, "Love your exhibit." So
Thank
you have a
you.
fan there for sure. Now I want to take a little step back
Yes.
to as for you to assess what does the opportunity of the Sondheim Prize and its visibility mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, you know what? I think that competitions like this really lay bare the inner workings of the art worlds and reinforce the notion that in art, it's not talent that gets you places.
Mhm,
It's rather your affiliations, public validation, your merits, and this manufactured aura of what an artist is that really dictates your worth in in the art worlds.
mhm.
So, you know, in short, Donnie, if you're asking me, I would say I think the five of us should each get $25,000, a $5,000 travel stipend, and a free studio and call it a day. You know, like that's really how I feel. But
Mhm,
my second answer would also be that the visibility and reach of, you know, such an exhibition of this caliber is just immense, and you know, in really kind of like broadening my audience, my reach within the art world. And to be honest, I feel like I'm also very excited to maybe spark the imagination of other museums, other institutions to consider this work in this context.
So, we're slowly coming out of the pandemic, but all of 2020 last year we've been holed up.
Mhm.
How are you staying creative at this time?
So you know what? For me, creativity is really not something that comes and goes, even in moments of turmoil. But it's something that is rather just always present, you know. And I think that this is true for everybody. It's just whether or not we're tapping into it. But you know, for me, creativity is something that I turn to in moments of celebration, moments of loss, as I was explaining earlier with, you know, my mother, death, life, mama, like processing my father's passing, and it's like turning to art in that very troublesome moment. But it's also a place, that I go to for exploration, that I don't have to necessarily produce something amazing and stellar, that it's okay to just like explore and be with materials, and with your thoughts. And it's also just a place that is always so welcoming for my inquisitive mind, that so for me, because my work is so expansive, and most of these bodies of work are so much, about being ongoing, there's really always something that needs my attention in the studio. But you know what? Yes, actually, for over the past couple of months, I've been leading a peer mentorship program with Transformer in Washington, D.C., a fabulous arts organization. And so I've been working with 5 just stellar artists. And, I feel like that is also a part of like the creativity, right? And keeping active and engaging with others. But so that's just been amazing, thinking about, working with these artists and thinking about the professional development aspect of being an artist. And actually, let me plug something in. So this program actually culminates in a performance program that is scheduled for July and August. So, keep an eye out on socials, and I'll be posting about this.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that upcoming performance. And so, speaking of that, is there something in particular that you are looking forward to as an artist?
Well, you know what? I think, going back to this exhibition for a second, I feel like I am, again, so grateful and thankful that that I took this challenge, right? Because it was very difficult, but I'm glad that, the selection process and really like thinking about my work in this expansive way, and then making selections that really, could be stand-ins for each body of work, was just it was just new for me. And I do feel that, I don't know, I feel like this particular grouping of the 5 bodies of work is ready to be shown broadly and widely, like, so I'm excited to really kind of bring this forward to other places in a similar, conglomeration of sorts. But you know what? So having said that, with that in mind, I feel like, so that's creating a tiny little space and a little opening, if you will, where I am able to think about new projects. So, I've been developing a couple of bodies of work over the past, 2-3 years, which is, it's hilarious, because I feel like with the art process, it's been a couple of years and I seriously have nothing to show for it. So, so it's a little funny, but just recently, a couple of funders have, really kind of gotten behind this vision. And so they're trusting the vision, and it's setting up the space for, the exploration of these ideas has been happening, and now the resources are present. So I'm just excited to dive in, and the most exciting part is that if you ask me, well, what are these bodies of work? I have the ideas that I've been developing, but really, I don't know. Like, because it's such an early spot, I don't know what the nature of the work will be. I don't know how expansive the form will be. I don't know if it will be just one particular media, or if it will be, multiple media coming together. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's, that keeps me excited.
That's fantastic. We're definitely very happy and very proud of you, Hoesy.
Thank you, Dany. You've been such a joy to work with, so I appreciate that.
So let's see if there's any questions out in the audience. But I definitely have a question for you. Can you tell us a little bit about the artists that have inspired you in your work?
Oh, yes. Well, you know what? I think, I don't know if you can, maybe you see it immediately, but definitely I feel like Louise Bourgeois is somebody that I'm like, oh my God, always. But specifically, something that's coming to mind is there's a particular poncho in the front, the one with the dog. Yes, this middle one. So, that dog that you see, that creature laying down, that's actually, it stems from a Matisse painting at the Baltimore Museum of Art. So, I feel like with being in Baltimore, whether or not you wanted to be influenced by Matisse, we had this great collection. So I feel like it entered my psyche. And when I was working with this form, I definitely referenced that image. Obviously, it's completely different, but I referenced that image. And actually within this image, that figure, the seated figure, comes from a Diego Rivera mural. I mean, it's completely different, but it comes from that. And then the space itself is from a trip literally right before the pandemic. So I came back from Mexico City and bam, everything was closed because the pandemic hit. But that was from Tenochtitlan and the pyramids there. So just in that one image, those three, influences coming together.
That's great. It's fantastic. Well, thank you, Hoesy, for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was just lovely.
You're welcome. And so a big thank you to our digital team, as always, for producing this program. And finally, an even bigger thank you to all of you, the audience, for sharing this experience with us. The Janet and Walter Sondheim Artscape Prize exhibition is on view at the Walters Art Museum through Sunday, July 8th. Now, the museum is temporarily closed, and we will reopen to the public on Wednesday, June 23rd. We are sincerely sorry for this brief interruption in the presentation of the exhibition, but we look forward to the reopening next week. And as always, admission to the museum and exhibitions is free. Thank you. Goodbye for now.